Just great. Thank you.
Awesome. Okay, folks who are just now starting to come in, go ahead and let us know where you're signing in from, what city and state, what country. We'd love to hear where you're coming in from. Also, let us know if you can see us and hear us. We want to make sure that everything is good in terms of you being able to see and hear us. Make sure there's no echoes, drop offs in sound, anything like that. We love to help. Love you to help us with that. Also, if you're just joining us, feel free to hit the like or the applause button or the support button, any of those, to let us know that you're here and glad to be here, and we're glad to be with you. We also want to hear back from you in terms of comments, whether they're questions, feedback. If a certain point resonates with you, we want to make sure we expound on those points. If there's something else that you want us to kind of dig a little deeper on, we've got two great guests that's going to really help us with this topic of growing a public speaking career. So let me go ahead and welcome, first of all, Dr. Candy Campbell. Welcome.
Hey there.
And Miss Sharon Weinstein, welcome to the show.
Hi, how are you?
Excellent, doing great. Glad to have you both. If you haven't followed either of them before, I suggest you follow them. They have some great content. They've been speaking all over the nation, all over the world for many years, lots of experience, and have grown a very successful public speaking business. And we want to talk with both of them, kind of get their insight, what it took for them to get to that next level. First of all, how did they even get into the business, and then how they grew their business, and also some of the pivots they've had to make in 2020 with this pandemic that we're all dealing with. So first of all, I'd like to kind of start off with you, Candy. How did you get into this? How did you get into public speaking and actually doing it for a living?
It's a great question, Rollis. Well, I will tell you that Sharon and I have two completely different stories. So I hope your listeners will tune in for both. My journey was that it started when I was in college. My very first degree before I became a nurse was in speech communications and an emphasis in acting. And I've been a union actor for a long time. My side gig has been acting. But in college, I was a speech coach, and I judged speech meets, and I presented all over I was going to school in the state of Washington, so I was all over the Pacific Northwest. I was on the speech team and all of that kind of thing. And then scrolling ahead after I became a nurse, I sort of went underground with that. I didn't see, how that had anything to do with my life. And then in 2003, my oldest daughter was at college, and she got a job with a speaking bureau. And she said, "Mom, I am going through the bios of these people." And she says, "You have more creds than half of them." She said, "I'm going to sign. Is it okay because we have different last names, if I, put your name out there and tell these people?" And I'm like, "Sure." So suddenly I had a speaker bureau, and I was sent off on my first speaking gig, and it was to the Asian American Restaurant Association.
Wow.
It wasn't anything to do with healthcare,
Okay.
but speech on managing, etc. And so anyway, it's sort of, the news got out that I was available, and suddenly I had a book, I had a film, I was getting invitations, and it just started like that.
Wow, that's cool. Okay, interesting. Now, how about you, Sharon? What's your story?
Well, first of all, Candy, I hope that you like Asian food. That's number one. Okay. Number two, my story is a bit different. I've been speaking for years. I've been a nurse since I was basically a teenager. Have been in nursing much longer than Candy. And my area of expertise was in infusion therapy, IV therapy, and nutrition support. I had the opportunity to lead delegations of infusion therapy experts, pharmacists, nurses, physicians, and others all across the world, and had done many of those delegations for people to people, and then had also done a lot of work for Premier, the hospital GPO, as their director of international affairs. Because I was teaching and speaking as a part of my job, if you will, it never occurred to me that one could actually monetize that and that there was money to be made, until one of our business partners asked me to speak at their national sales meeting for a substantial amount of money for 1 hour. And a light went off. It was one of those aha moments. And I decided, oh my God, this is what I'm doing. I may as well add this to my repertoire. And so at that point, I decided to start a speaking, coaching, and consulting business, and realized that that was really where my future was. I was already doing all of those things, became very involved in the National Speakers Association, which is where I met Candy. And I'm now the national chair of the certification board for that group. So
Awesome.
speaking is what I do. And many of my clients come through the healthcare space, mainly because that is where I spent 100% plus of my time for so many years.
Well, I feel really privileged to have both of you on today. Thank you very much for joining us today. Wow, that's impressive.
Pleasure to be here.
Yeah.
Pleasure.
Okay, so one of the things I'd like to ask you, and I want to get your opinion on this. In fact, before I do this, let me just say hello to some of the ones who just joined. We've got, let's see, Michael Van de Wiel from the Netherlands is joining us. Welcome.
Yay.
We have,
Wow.
yeah, we have Patty Witt from Hazel Green, Alabama. We have Noelle Coles from Boston, Massachusetts area. Welcome to all of you. Thank you for being here with us. Please give us your questions, comments, feedback as we go throughout this discussion. Everyone who's just joining us. So do you feel, and either one of you, perhaps let's start off with you, Sharon. Do you
Yeah.
feel that speakers are born or made?
That's an interesting comment. If you ask any new set of parents, they would automatically say that kids are born speaking, letting themselves be known and heard. That if you don't know that they're there, you must be totally hearing impaired, because there's no way that you would not know. A lot of people would also say that primarily about females. They always are going to be heard. They're always going to have a voice. If you don't give them a voice, they're going to get one. I was on a coaching call this morning with 150 women from throughout the world. And one of the things that we talked about was the whole concept of, how can I have a voice? How can I be heard in an otherwise male-dominated society, in my business, in my profession, within my major pharma conglomerate? And so I believe that speakers can be developed, although I believe that there is a natural inclination for one to like to get up in front of people, to want to be heard. I don't think that I ever considered myself a speaker when I was in school, although I took speech as a normal course in my baccalaureate program, but I never really thought of it in terms of being a speaker, even though I was out there doing things and speaking. I think that each of us has something within us. And when you look at young kids and their ability to just act out and improv and do things that are so totally amazing and so freelance and so pure, so inviting and so warm, that I think all of us can learn to do a lot of the same things. But I think that our techniques and our ability to learn a lot of those skills come through organizations like the National Speakers Association.
Ah, okay, yeah, great point. And I want to come back to that about the National Speakers Association. Before I do that, I want to get your thoughts, Candy. Do you feel, in your opinion, speakers are born or they're made, in terms of, from a public speaking standpoint, what we're, our main discussion today? Do you think it's something they're more born with, or something they can learn?
I definitely think it's something to learn because, again, my take is a little bit different than Sharon's, because if you knew me as a little kid, I was not an extrovert. I was an introvert, and I'm sort of an ambivert now because I love to perform. But when it comes to speaking, learning to take speech courses, or to do everything that I did in high school and then in college, I will say the impetus was because as a child, I had a speech impediment. I had a lateral lisp. And my family doctor told my mother that she should get me in some speech therapy. And so I had speech therapy. And then, because I was shy, I liked to watch people, and I was very, talkative in my home, but at school, not so much. And so that sort of brought it out, and, if you will, gave me permission to my voice. And then as I got better at that, I always at home had loved, as Sharon said, little kids love acting out things.
Oh, yeah.
I always did that for my family. But it wasn't even high school so much. It was really college when I accidentally got into acting. And that's a whole other story. But what I like about that is that because I tend to be more introverted, I can put on somebody else's guise and I be somebody else. And it just tickles me. I like that a lot.
I think
That's
that's a lot of fun. I think it's interesting, Rollis, that Candy and I are both products of speech and language therapists. Kudos to them. Great profession. I also
yes,
went to speech therapy, but only for about 6 months because I could not pronounce an SH. And since that was part of my name, it was going to be difficult.
yes, yes. Glad you were able to overcome that. That's
Yeah.
awesome. Joe says, "Wow, Candy, who would have thought? Look at you now." Okay, so this is great to hear this because I think a lot of folks, looking at both of you as accomplished speakers, they're like, I don't know if I could ever do that, or they're just so far ahead of me. Everybody's got to start somewhere, and you guys started in different places, which I think is very encouraging for anyone who's watching. Now, by the way, Kimberly says hello. Kimberly Billings, hi, Kimberly, good to see you as well. Okay, so I want to go back to this national speakers. Well, you know what? Before I do that, one other thing I wanted to ask you guys: give us an idea of the scope of the type of speaking you've done throughout the year. So, if someone's just jumping on this, they've never been to your profile and seen some of your prior engagements. Tell us about some of the work you've done in the past, up until, let's say, before 2020, when it comes to speaking in front of audiences. So let's start off with you, Candy.
All right. Well, like a lot of speakers, when I first started out, I wasn't sure exactly what I should speak about. And so, as it turned out, I have a background, as I said, in acting, but not just general acting. After I had a difficult time in about 1992, I was divorced, and anybody who's been through that knows it's a terrible time. And I needed to laugh. So I enrolled myself in some stand-up comedy classes. And so I was living in the San Francisco area, and at the time there were a lot of comedy places. So true to form, I put on a persona. I wore an old ratty bathrobe with a roller in my hair and a kind of an unlit cigarette, I had, and
Oh,
yeah, I was the home nurse who got tired of going to work and wearing those scrubs. So I just put a shingle outside my door and said, come on in. If, it was kind of like Charlie Brown's, or Lucy, the doctor is in, 5 minutes. And it was just a whole shtick that I did. I did it for 9 years in comedy clubs.
my heavens.
During that time, I noticed in the classes that I was taking that the other comics were doing improv. And boy, oh boy, that was really something that allowed me, as Sharon mentioned, improv. Kids are good at it, but I needed permission for some reason to learn that there are actually sort of principles of improv, rules that allow you to be more successful in communicating. And as soon as that happened, I realized, oh my gosh, this is something that healthcare needs. Because in 1995, after our group, I co-founded an improv company there in San Francisco, and we played together for like 3 years. But in 1995, after one of our gigs, somebody from a Silicon Valley startup, which is now pretty famous, came and said, "Can you help our engineers play nice with each other?" And so, because I had a teaching background, and then the acting background, I put together curriculum and started facilitating, teaching, and then taking that show, if you will, to conferences and talking about that. I found my niche, interprofessional communication.
Oh, love it. Love it. How about you, Sharon?
Okay, my story was a little different. I started out teaching and speaking about clinical kinds of things. I was about as clinical as a person could get. I knew everything about my particular field, and I was invited to speak in many, many places. As a result of that, I had been at the same time the president of the Infusion Nurses Society, then the chair of their certification board. So because those were the things in my area of expertise, that's what I spoke about. When I had that aha moment I told you about and decided to be a speaker, I made a list of 68 things about which I could speak. No one can have 68 things about which they're experts. You need to narrow that niche. And that's what I would recommend to anyone who's really looking at this or considering a career as a professional speaker. You cannot do everything and do it really well. pinpoint maybe between 3 and 5 things about which you're so passionate that there will be an innate belief in who you are and what your message is and what you're about to say. So where I started out doing clinical, I moved to product development. I moved into the sales and marketing space because I was working with a lot of manufacturers of clinical products. I moved into leadership and ran a leadership institute in the former Soviet Union for 12 years, and then did a lot of work in that space as well. And because of my global experience and working in that area for so long, I also did a lot of things about global nursing, global leadership, global management, those sorts of things. I now do a significant amount of training, probably about 30%, about 40 to 50% coaching, and the rest is pretty much public speaking, generally keynotes, workshops, conferences, virtual and otherwise. And I really love what I do. I love to have a voice. I love to be heard, but I love to inspire others to pick up and see that they too can do the same. And that to me is perhaps the most exciting.
Oh, I love that. And I see that. I see that in both of you guys. So we got a comment too. Noel says, I used to be able to speak so well in front of large crowds. What is your advice for others who have a great message but are afraid to deliver it? You want to take that first, Sharon?
Well, sure. I have a friend, he's probably my dearest friend, who's a PharmD with whom I worked for many years. And Bill always said to me, just imagine that all of the people in the room are stark naked. They're all wearing their birthday suits, and you're the only one in the room who's clothed. And if you stand up there and you present with a big smile on your face, don't worry about a thing. It'll all flow into place. Great. That was how I started. I still think it works, but I really believe that each of us, if we have enough confidence in our message and enough passion about it, that others within the audience will understand and feel that passion, that intensity, and want to listen to whatever that end message is, what it is we're saying, and how they can apply those lessons learned and take them away. So to Noel, you're highly experienced. You're a real master. Just know that whatever you do behind the scenes, you can do up there in front of a crowd.
Oh, I love that. And, your lesson about the 68 messages and honing it down, that's a powerful lesson because I tend to be someone who tries to do too many different things.
Right.
And you can't be good at everything.
Mm.
So you've got to really hone it down. So let's work through that. How did you get that 68 down, and what did you get it down to? What amount of topics did you get it down to when you went through that list? Just roughly. Yeah.
Roughly, I basically speak now about service excellence. I speak about leadership and the ability to develop leaders. I speak about employee and customer engagement, because you can't engage your staff unless you're engaged at the top, and it trickles all the way down. And those are the topics that I tend to stick to. I really don't move very far from that space. I may intertwine a few things, but the real topic that got me started, and I still speak about today, is stress and crisis management. And that's because I shared with you before, I had worked 100 hours a week, 3 countries a week. I put myself in a situation in which there was no way that I was going to survive if I continued at that pace. So I like to really speak about how we address crises. And then to do that through this whole concept of management, especially in the space in which we're living today, when we look at the pandemic and we look about the ramifications, this is an ideal opportunity to create leaders for the future, to allow them to really express themselves and to lead in a direction that will allow all of their people to grow with them and to survive and to thrive, to be sustained within what we're going through now. So when you start with stress and you move it into those aspects of leadership, crisis, leadership, service excellence, and all of those pieces, they fit together. They fit that puzzle.
Oh, love it. How about you? How about you, Candy? What do you think about this?
Well, I take a slightly different, similar, but slightly different. And my first one word that I want to tell Noelle and anybody who's feeling that way, just a little reticent, is Toastmasters. A lot of people come up to Sharon and I and say, oh, I'd like to be in the National Speakers Association. And we're like, great, go get some training, get some practice, because it's an inducted kind of a thing. You don't just pay your money and get in.
Right.
But Masters is a training ground. And that's where, just like I learned as an actor, you need a coach, you need a support group, and usually a class is like that. And
Mhm.
Toastmasters is so good. They've got it down to a science. You limited because everybody's learning. And then of course there's different levels. I don't think Sharon and I came through Toastmasters. Again, my bachelor's is in speech communication, and I already had a lot of that. But um, I've been a judge at many of their events, and I love to do it because just like I like to watch things like America's Got Talent, I like to see people developing themselves, right?
Yes, yes.
And that whole thing about coaching and how we got into it, what I speak on mostly is interprofessional communication, about tearing down walls and building bridges. And the other thing that I coach people on is English as a second language. And I can do that because, as it turns out, like Sharon, I've traveled the world and did that for a living for several years. But as an actor, I use that time to study dialect. And so I've had all those classes, and I've been able since college, and just lately I've been doing more of it in the last decade or so, of helping people, especially in healthcare. We come from all over the world, and if you're in America, and it's great if you've learned English as a second language. I mean, kudos. So many people could never even go through nursing school or med school or any kind of speech language, take any degree. But
Right.
these people are coming in with second and third and fourth languages. And what we know is that sometimes, if we want to talk about equity and diversity, there's some prejudice that comes when people have an accent that other people, or even your patient, are having a trouble understanding. And in healthcare, we deal with people very often. Our patients are elderly, and if they are English language first speakers, they have some hearing difficulty. It really is difficult for them to understand their healthcare providers, and then they complain. So students come to me, and other people come to me to help them understand how to get rid of or modify the accent that they have.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's a great point. Okay, so another question, kind of to follow up on this.
Mhm.
When you're trying to find that one topic that resonates with you, or the one topic you should be speaking about, can you break down for me what are you using as the demarcate? Because there's lots of things I can get pretty excited
Mhm.
about. How do you hone it down to those one or two or three? Actually, I think you just gave a list of four, right? Out of 68, you got down to four topics that you really
Right.
focus on, Sharon. So, if you give us some pointers on that, if you don't mind.
Okay, the four topics are interrelated in many ways. First of all, I was doing leadership. I used my leadership curriculum, which was based on three books: The Oz Principle, Who Moved My Cheese, and Goldilocks on Management. I don't know if you've ever read that book, but there are
Oh,
vignettes that are really encouraging. For
okay.
example, Red Riding Hood rides her red Ferrari through the forest, and the wolf comes to her. And of course, she blows him off because she has an MBA and can do better. Very interesting concepts, especially related to contingency planning and things like that, with the three little pigs and blowing down the house, those sorts of things. Always having a plan. When you run out of cheese, what's your plan B? So from a leadership perspective, that curriculum, which I helped to hone for a lot of foreign speakers, for whom I would say the common language among them was Russian, which was not my common language, but each of them understood enough words in English to get by. And so
Mm,
by using role play and other things, we were able to really mobilize the forces and create a concept in which what started out as English speakers teaching others became foreign speakers teaching their peers, with English speakers overseeing the concept. So creating a cadre of future leaders, future teachers for the next generation of healthcare, which is what's really exciting when you see it pass on. So from a standpoint of the four topics that I have, they all reflect back into that whole concept of balance, really.
Mhm.
I started out with balance. I told you, because I was overworked and I knew I wouldn't survive if I kept that way. I became the stress buster. That was my moniker, if you will. People knew
yes.
me as that and knew that I could talk about stress in relation to leadership and management and everything else. And when you tie all of that together, when you're trying to be balanced, one of the things that you don't want to compromise on is that concept of balance, of service excellence, of delivering on your promise. So when you look at that idea, they do all come together. When I look at the kinds of things that you've spoken about and the kinds of sessions that you facilitated, I could easily in a private session pick 4 to 5 things that I think you have traditionally mastered in a really great way. And that those would be the kinds of things that I would concentrate were I you. But I believe that we all get there in a different way, and that overcoming that I'm an expert at everything, we cannot all be experts at everything.
Yeah.
We need to find what we love, find the passion, find the love, run with it, and share that message with the masses.
So
I've been fortunate in that people in every country have stress. People in every country have leadership issues. People in every country need to deliver on service, need to deliver on the promise. Exactly. That makes it easier for me.
Yeah. Well, Noelle loved your advice. She said good point about narrowing it down. She appreciated that. Noelle also said great point of what Candy had mentioned as well. So you definitely have helped both of them. So thank you for that. We got Wesley Willis who just came on. Hi, Wesley. He has his own show too. I watched it just the other day. Great job on his show.
How are you?
Yeah, he has a live show, and he's also a nurse by trade as well. So
great.
So he knows.
When you're a nurse, you're a nurse for life.
Yes. He says, great show. I think you helped me detect a bug in LinkedIn Live. Oh, yes, that's right. I was watching one of them. I tell you, this live has been an interesting thing. It's been an interesting ride. I am thankful, though, for it. I'm not going to complain at all because I love that I'm one of the ones that they allowed to do this. So I'm appreciative. But it has had some different issues I have had to work through, and it's been challenging, but I'm appreciative. Noelle says, I've not heard of Toastmasters. Looking it up now. Awesome. Everyone should check this out, she says.
Yeah.
Excellent.
She's exactly right. And Candy, I'm glad you mentioned that. I didn't come through Toastmasters either, but I did also attend meetings in Chicago when I was there of Windy City Toastmasters, which was an invitational group, but a great group of peers. Really great way to start and get going strong.
Excellent. Absolutely. Now, I'd like to do a little would you rather question. You ready? Okay. Okay.
Sure. We're prepared for that.
Would you always rather attract flocks of birds or clouds of dust? And those in the comments, I want you to answer the same question. This is going to uncover something. I can feel it.
You're saying attract clouds of dust?
Yes, or flocks of birds.
Or flocks of birds.
Or flocks of birds. Okay. Well, that is a very interesting question. I am thinking that if you are attracting clouds of dust, you are not a leader. You are choking on the stuff that other people are, you think of a truck in front of you that's kicking up a lot of dust. So I would rather attract a flock of birds because at least you're going somewhere.
Ooh, I like that.
That's interesting, Candy, because I thought of it in a totally different way.
Okay,
I also selected flocks of birds, but when I looked at clouds of dust, I thought, clouds of dust, wow, you have left your mark. An amazing group of people who are now ready to rise and shine and take it to the next level. I chose flocks of birds because I felt as if that gave you the opportunity to empower an entirely new group of people and allow them to shine.
I like that. I like that too. Okay, that deserves this right here.
Thank
you. Yeah, those are great answers. Okay, what do you guys say in the comments? What would you rather attract, flocks of birds or clouds of dust? Okay, going back into this, here's one thing that I know a lot of people are thinking. They haven't asked it yet, but I know that they're thinking this. And by the way, I do want to follow up on what you said earlier, Sharon, what you think I ought to speak about. I think we should. I'll take a little
conversation.
So how do you turn this into money is what they're probably thinking. It's like, okay, how do I put my shingle out there and let people know? And like, how does that whole thing work? Or because they don't know, they don't know the first thing about how to charge. Now we're not going to go through a detailed business course here on how to do it, but can you give us some tips on how they would turn this speaking passion into money?
Well, I'll start. First of all, of course, you do have to have a plan. And that is why Once you get to the point where you're pretty sure about what you want to talk about or what you love to speak about and what people are asking you to speak about, like with Sharon and myself, then you do I know a lot of speakers who speak for free in order to sell their books or in order to sell their programs, etc. And I think that most of us do some part of that also. So there's several different ways you can do that. You have to sort of discern your niche. Are you like my niche is usually with associations or corporate, and they're usually similar to creating service excellence through interprofessional communication, sort of digging down, giving workshops and stuff. So it's not, my point is, it's not just giving a motivational speak. It is doing all the other things. And that's why as nurses and as healthcare professionals, we're used to flexing on a dime. And I think that that's really an important part of setting up your business is, first of all, knowing what you want to do. Second of all, not quitting your day job too soon.
Exactly.
Oh, go ahead, Sharon, you can add to that.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree with that. Although I'm smiling at Noel's comments about flocks of birds. I think it's pretty amusing. I won't say what it was, but it's pretty funny. I think that you're exactly right. Number one, don't quit your day job. Know what you do and do it well, and make sure that you've got money coming in and a salary coming in and that you're able to sustain yourself. I think that having a business plan is probably the most critical. I think that when nurses go out on their own, or other people from any profession go out on their own and decide that they're going to do something and it will be entrepreneurial, they don't have a plan. They don't understand that they need to consider it a business like any other business. They need to have a plan for 1, 2, 3, and 5 years out to understand where that money's going to come from, what will be their approach towards sales and marketing, who will be their contacts, who will be within their network, how will they reach that network, and how will they succeed. So I think that a lot of that comes, fortunately, for those of us who are already in the profession, through organizations like NSA that have a lot of coaching opportunities and allow us, because we're such an inclusive giving group, to learn from our peers. The theory behind our founder, Cabot Robert, is always the fact that the pie is big enough for all of us. And that we can grow the pie by growing it together, by working with one another. So I think that by having the camaraderie of some of your colleagues and your peers who are already in the business or working within that space, and will help you to develop and help you to understand where you need to go and what's next. You don't need to reinvent the wheel. Chances are that if you need an agreement, somebody already has one. Chances are that if you need to have a photographic release, somebody already has one. So it's a matter of deciding with whom you'll network and how you'll build that network to help you to grow as well. And I also believe in masterminds heavily.
Yes. Okay, for those who aren't familiar with the concept, go ahead and explain, if you don't mind, what is a mastermind?
A mastermind is a group of like-minded professionals who decide on a focus for a particular topic or concept that they would like to grow. So it might be in the area of business development. So I had a business development mastermind for several years with one group of 2 other women, and then with another group of 5 or 6 different professionals. They were pretty global from a standpoint of within North America, but not beyond this border, our borders. But it was easy to connect and to get together on things. When we wanted to make a purchase or do something, we did it as a team. When we wanted to all learn from that experience, we pitched in our money and we did it together. When we wanted to run something past someone, like a sales and marketing approach or something for your website, we had 5 or 6 different sets of ears and eyes that could look at it and give feedback. And the concept behind it is that everyone wins, and that from each of those subsequent sessions, now they're almost all virtual, but sometimes they can also be face-to-face. Everyone gains. Everyone has an opportunity to talk about what they need. And then other people have the opportunity to provide input in terms of what they need to do to get there. And then they coach one another through that process.
Oh, very good. Candy, do you have anything you want to add to that particular point about about that?
Like Sharon, and if you don't know where to go or anything like that, once you get into the National Speakers Association, those things are a part of what everybody talks about and what you'll be offered. And if you're not offered to join one, you start your own. I know I've had one for many years, and like Sharon, have been in different ones. And yeah, I could say that probably right now, Sharon and I have a working mastermind as
Yeah,
working
a
together.
daily one, a daily
Yes,
one.
yes. I love that. If it's not one there, you create one. That's a great point. Lots of folks are popping in, and I didn't get a chance to say hi to Kim. Kim LaMontagne is joining us today from Sarasota,
Hi,
Florida.
Kim, how are you?
Yeah. So lots of comments who came in since we've been talking here. There were mixed reviews on the clouds of dust versus the blurs. A majority seem to pick birds though. They seem to pick the birds. Noel says Sharon hugs to you. Oh, am I getting that backwards?
I said that. I
You said
hugged
hugs
her.
to you to her. Okay,
I hugged her.
very good, excellent. And that was funny about the birds. The birds.
That was a
pooping.
funny comment, wasn't it?
I,
Oh.
I cannot type and follow the chat at the same time. I don't have that good of eyesight.
So okay, so going back to our discussion, I love this point. We're talking about with the masterminds and then creating one if there's not one there. When do you think it's appropriate or good to bring in a coach? I'll let you start with that, Karen. When's a good time to bring a coach to help you through this process? Or do you think it's one's involved? Do you think we should just do the mastermind only, or do you think there's opportunities where a coach should be brought in?
I thought you said Sharon. You want Sharon?
Or
Did you
Candy?
say Sharon? Do you want me to
Candy,
answer?
No, Candy first, and then Sharon.
Okay, go ahead, Candy.
It depends upon what aspect you need coaching in. Because like Sharon said, if you need a one-page business plan or something, then we have so many associations with the people who've done that. And our friend Jim, who passed away, who created it, is a part of National Speakers Association. There's that aspect, but that's not the actual speaking. If you're talking about speaking, coaching on speaking, there are different people who do that too.
Oh.
So there's people who can help punch up the humor in a speech. There's people who can help you create a new path if you've got some ideas. And again, either coaching and or masterminding. It just, the coaching is the polishing of the diamond, and the mastermind helps you cut the path.
I like that. I like that analogy. No, that's good.
That's a very good one. Yes. So start with the
I of
mastermind.
course believe in coaching because I am a coach. So I have helped countless numbers of professionals reach that next level, empower themselves to reach a whole new height, move into that C-suite and do what they need to do as a result of coaching.
Right.
I too have done a great deal of speaker coaching, and my speaker coaching has focused on not only can I help you gain the confidence, give you video feedback, I also will help create your PowerPoint presentation, coach you through the presentation, write your notes, or do whatever else you need. And I have worked with that on topics that are so different from what I do for a living and so different from anything I've ever learned that my favorite story is once when I was invited to do an NBC program on feng shui for cars. And I knew nothing about feng shui for cars. I barely knew how a car started, except that you put in the key. And it didn't matter to me what happened as long as it started when I wanted it to start.
Right.
And so when they asked me to do it, my husband looked at me, I remember, and he said, "You don't know anything about feng shui for cars." And I said, "It doesn't matter. I know about feng shui for houses. And by Sunday, I will be an expert on feng shui for cars." And I was.
Wow.
It's a matter of wanting it and going for it.
Okay. Well, very good. So I have another would you rather question for you. Ready?
Sure.
Would you rather wear braces on your teeth as an adult for 5 years or wear them while you're in school for 10?
Oh, for me, I already wore braces as an adult for 2 years, and I would rather have that because as an adult, you don't care. As a kid, oh, it's so painful.
What makes it painful?
Oh, well, other people making fun of you and getting just
It
being,
used to be the bands or something, wasn't it?
it was awful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I've never had braces, so I cannot speak from experience, but I do have two grandchildren who have had braces. And one of them, I think, is now getting ready to get off. The other one is off. I think it might be better to have them as a kid when everybody else has them and no one really notices.
Mm. See, I love this. There's different. This is interesting how your partnership, even in what we're going to talk about here in a few minutes, works
Mm-hmm.
because you have different perspectives and ways of looking at the same question or the same item, whatever it is. And tell me about that. Tell me how that's worked well for you guys. And now sometimes it has to be frustrating, but then other times it has to be refreshing.
Well,
What
first,
we're doing now, let me just start. What we're doing now is really interesting. The whole concept of L4E actually came from, the name came from me, but the concept came from Candy. And it was just a matter of we had done some things together, the way that things were changing, and I'll have her explain it. That was a good opportunity for us to really build it to a whole new level. But I think that what really matters is that even though we're both nurses and we've both traveled the globe and we've both done a lot of the same things from a standpoint of teaching and clinicals and more, we both bring different life skill sets to the table.
Yes.
So where I have expertise in being the last person to review a document and make sure that it's right, or the
Yes.
person who's really going to fine tune something and make sure that it's what we intend to say,
Uh huh.
or the one who perhaps has more writing experience in that respect. I think Candy brings a perspective of the, the newness, the improv, the go for it, the creative piece
Mm-hmm.
that allows us to work off of one another to a tremendous advantage. Now tell us what you think, Candy.
oh,
Yes.
I think that's right. And to add to that, I'd say that, there's that truism in business that you like to do business with people you know, like, and trust. And we have done that for a number of years as we knew each other, as we spoke in the same sort of circles and had a lot of friends in common. It just was a natural thing that and then we worked on a few projects together. Like she said, it was a natural thing that when COVID-19 came and we both sort of looking at each other, it's like, okay, well, we're going to have to flex. I'm known as the innovation nurse because I do so many things in so many areas depending upon what the problem is. So as nurses, we're always flexing. And I just threw out the idea, what do we need right now? And I think we said this on your program before, Rollis, but maybe it bears repeating, that what the world needs now in terms of the healthcare industry is we need encouragement. We need some insight about what's gone on, what's happening now, and what we should do in the future. We need some just to encouragement to play off of the integrity that we all bring to healthcare. It's very intense, intimate work, and we see people at their very worst very often, most often, and that takes a certain temperament, and I think a certain neutrality,
Mm-hmm.
and we bring that to the fact that we're working together, creating something new that's going to be innovative and virtual for people in healthcare who are leaders that we want to help.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a this goes back to a point that I think Candy you mentioned earlier is when you first start out, and even speakers do it who are experienced speakers. Sometimes you do gigs for free because it may help you get in front of certain corporate clients and that sort of thing. And people were applauding Google because Google's format was we're going to make the search for free and we're going to allow people to use certain products they have for free. And people didn't understand how they could do that. How in the world can you do it for free? But I think they copied the idea from you speakers because it's what they call a freemium model, where you offer so much for free, but in turn it helps you to sell, something else of a much greater value. And that's why Google's probably one of the more larger companies that's out there today, is because they give away some free value up front, but it did give them a much wider net to cast whenever they were offering services or products. So is that kind of the thought process that a speaker takes, is that they offer this value for free because it's going to allow them to perhaps get more business on the back end?
Absolutely. And that's building the business model. And I can tell you those new startups, the ones that I worked with in Silicon Valley, like Sharon, that had nothing to do with whatever you, but because I was facilitating leadership training and teamwork, that in a startup or any business really, even if you're not in the infancy of the business, you need to be open and neutral to new ideas so that you can learn and you can grow. So the improv skills were helping in that regard, because some people have blinders on about what they're good at and how they see the world. But if you're trying to grow a company, whether it's your own small business or a bigger business like Google was trying to grow, I can tell you, because they
Mhm.
did acquire these other businesses, some of which I had worked with, the problems that they were having on a real day-to-day basis was that certain people had policies and procedures that were thwarting innovation because people were
Mm,
afraid to have a thought. Even
yeah.
when they did those, what do they
Mhm.
call brainstorming sessions, people were editing them before they weren't allowed to just spew out and risk being wrong or looking silly, because there was judgment there. And so the key to innovation, and what Sharon and I are doing right now, is, we think, being open to ideas, being open to try something like you've done, Rollis, with the show. We'll try it, we'll see how it works, we'll get feedback, we'll move from there.
Absolutely. Okay, so I know we're running kind of towards the end of the hour here, so I wanted to touch base on this one thing I think is very important, that you guys had to do. You've had this certain business model for so many years, and then all of a sudden in 2020 the pandemic hits, and so you had to look at a way to pivot your business, obviously, because you can't speak in front of large crowds like you used to. So tell me the process that got you to where you are now, because I think it's very extraordinary. I think folks in our audience can learn from this on how perhaps they could pivot their own business, whether it's in public speaking or something else.
Okay, I'll start off. Mostly brainstorming, having a couple of sessions by phone to determine what it was, what we wanted to be when we decided to grow up, if we ever decided to do that, and where we would go from there. So I mentioned having a business plan. So getting the legal structure in place, taking that to a standpoint of where will you be located? Do you need to also have a license to do business in Maryland? Having your attorney walk you through all of the pieces that are so critical to making that a success. Going from there with the development of a brand using graphics and with the development of a website. I happen to have a huge network of people with whom I've worked and who I trust for the past 12 to 15 years. And so we made a decision to go through those two people. I think we're both thrilled with the results. They
Totally.
have created things for us that others couldn't begin to touch, especially our graphic designer. And so having that opportunity to work with people who, again, like, and trust, who will understand who you are and the message that you want to convey, and then take it and run with it, makes life so much easier. At the same time, partnering with you has been a great benefit in terms of getting our conference on the ground, getting it off and running, knowing what we need to do, building on your expertise, your talents, and who and what that has allowed us to really take it to another level. At that point, I'm going to have to apologize and drop off because I have a client in stress mode and I've
Okay.
got to take care of
Well,
that.
thank you for
Okay.
your time. Appreciate you.
Thank you. Take care. Bye bye.
Okay.
Hi. Well, I'll add to that the business part of it, we have a 3 to 5 year plan, and it includes a lot of things. But we decided, just like she was saying, we would go all in on startup mode, and both of us are running our own businesses on the side, which are, have had a bit of a damper because of COVID-19, but still, I'm speaking to you from my video production studio in the basement, and I've been doing, virtual performances of Florence Nightingale and speaking and coaching and everything else. But Sharon and I said, okay, whatever it takes, we're going to work long days or whatever it takes, just to provide a really great experience, some education, some entertainment, and pay for it and not be in the hole. So we've got some terrific sponsors, including HR Maximizer. Your tech team has just been terrific to work with. And we have several other sponsors who have allowed us to basically pay our webmaster and our graphic artist, because without them, I don't think we'd be able to do this because it's virtual. So at the first part, I don't know if we even mentioned the name of what we're doing, did we?
Please do. No, we because the folks are probably wondering like, what are they talking about? So go ahead and tell us the name of the event and what the event is.
Okay, well, Thursday and Friday this week, we're putting on the Global Healthcare Leadership Summit. And we have three tiers of audiences. We have over 500,000 people on our list that we've sent out to, thanks to all our sponsors and everything. And we have, looks like around 500 people have already signed up and more coming in every day. It is a free conference. And we are going from, let's see, 8 a.m. Pacific, 11 a.m. Eastern, till 2 p.m. Pacific and 5 p.m. Eastern, both Thursday and Friday. And we have 30 top healthcare, actually, I think 31 top healthcare speakers from around the globe,
Awesome.
many of whom we knew from the National Speakers Association, and others some of them we met through you, Rollis, I would say.
It's all about relationships, right? I got a chance to meet people through